Hey all, this is Darren, Head of Remote at GitLab, and today I'm joined by Penny at Cobalt.io, and she had a few questions on the remote front, all things remote work, and I said, hey, let's record it, put it out there for the world, maybe some other people can benefit. So Penny, thank you so much for joining me.
Yeah, and Darren, thank you so much for having a very busy schedule. Just want to preface to the folks that Darren and I had an earlier meeting where I really was grateful for understanding how to work more asynchronously and in really empowering individuals. So, Darren, my first is actually a follow-up question. So, within the product and design team, I really love the idea of the DRI, the role and the responsibility. So as I'm socializing that with the team, one of the questions came up. So uh, at Cobalt, one of our values, our core values, is humble learning. So the question came up where, hey, we understand that the DRI, there's no explanation required. So everyone can collaborate, everyone can contribute, which is what part of our values as well. But if, let's say, a comment is not recognized or responded to, isn't that in conflict with our core value of humble learning? So we could have maybe someone's participating and added a comment and there's no response. It's just one of these things that we're trying to figure out how to reconcile, because we want people to learn, but we also understand that, oh my God, the person responsible for making a decision to move quickly can't constantly be explaining, or else it slows things down too.
Yes, that's an amazing question. That's a great value. I think there's two things you need to have in place for this to work. The
Mhm.
first is you need to work asynchronously such that any proposal or comment that would be put forth is documented. That has to happen. If it's the kind of thing where someone makes a proposal verbally and then the DRI makes a decision without explaining, it's kind of lost in the ether and you lose the opportunity for any learning to happen. However, if it is documented, there's two ways learning could still happen. One is
Okay.
that the DRI actually does respond to it, but just further down the road. But the fact that it is at least documented gives this person some breathing room to maybe get out of whatever season they're in and then come back to it. It's like, this will never go away. It's always going to be documented. Let's make a meeting
Yeah.
2 weeks from now and talk through the reasons why. So that's at
Okay.
least giving the person some courtesy of, I gotcha. Maybe I'm going on vacation or I've got a big client meeting, like something, I just got to get through this season and then we'll get back to it. But it needs to be documented to begin with. Otherwise that can never happen. The other thing that comes to mind is, and this is actually kind of a real life example on my end, is that if I were to make a proposal to change something within the finance section of the GitLab handbook, I'm not on the core finance team, but I can make a proposal to do something different. The eventual code owner for that section of the site is the chief financial officer.
Mhm.
But if the chief financial officer doesn't have the bandwidth or the space or whatever to respond back and help me learn why something was tweaked or accepted or rejected, this person has other people in the organization, controllers, senior directors, managers. There's an entire finance team. And so how I would go about it is we have a finance channel in Slack for GitLab.
Mhm.
So if a decision was made, so if I saw that my proposal was either rejected or it was edited and then merged, like something happened to it, but there was no explanation given, which I will caveat rarely happens because people are very thoughtful about the
Okay.
proposals they make. So for the most part, people do get responses because they're pretty thoughtful about putting them forth. But let's just say hypothetically it didn't happen. It would be totally acceptable to drop that issue link in the finance channel where everyone could see the outcome, everyone could see what my input was, everyone could see what changed, what was eventually merged or rejected. And I could just open it up to the finance team. Hey, does anyone have any visibility to this and could hop on a call with me or explain it here publicly in the issue so that everyone could
Okay.
learn? Where this would fall apart is if you had such a small team that there was not any additional people on the team
Yeah.
that had context. However, I do think that might solve itself because if you have a team that small, in theory, there'd be less friction getting to the chief financial officer anyway. Does this
Yeah.
make sense? So if you have a 10
Yeah.
person team, there's not a whole lot of layers anyway. So
Yeah.
it's going to be more acceptable for anyone to be able to have direct contact with the executive team. And then as it scales, you're going to need to lean more on the people that come into the org. That probably won't solve every issue, but I think the tweak I would make there is create a culture where anyone also supporting that team, supporting that DRI,
Yeah.
it is okay to ask for explanations and learning from that team. It's not seen as going around someone's back or anything like that. Like, you have to create the culture of, we're all in this together. That's what the other people on the team are there for, to stand in the gap and help learning happen if the DRI is doing something else.
Okay. No, this is super helpful. Thank you. And then my next question is, so Slack. There's this love-hate relationship with Slack. And one of the challenges that we're seeing right now is, so traditionally, Cobalt IO, we have several offices. And we used to be like, folks would work with Office, although we do have some distributed remote team members of the world. Slack. It's this thing where, okay, we want to work asynchronously. But then Slack, because, there's this Pavlovian effect where something happens in Slack and all of a sudden, people feel like they have to respond, because sometimes, let's say if a customer issue comes up, clearly everyone's monitoring. So it's this, how do we use Slack effectively so it's not this anxiety-ridden communication tool that will allow us to work asynchronously? Is there like sort of like a good best practices, or helping to set expectations? Because it is this thing where it almost becomes almost quite disruptive. And it goes against like, how do we work asynchronously? Because that means like there's pressure to be on all the time.
Yeah, this one is a complex one to unpack. So I'll give it a go. I'll give you an example of something that GitLab does to help shield against that. We expire all of our Slack messages after 90 days. So nothing in Slack can be queried after 90 days. What this does is it acts as a forcing function for all work to begin where it needs to end up, which is in GitLab, the product. Because everyone understands that if you start a project in Slack, if this idea comes to mind and you throw it in Slack, ultimately not great for you, because in 90 days, you're not going to be able to hit Command F and find anything related to it. It's all going to vanish. So this counteracts the human instinct to just start it instantaneously, because immediately you think, oh, wait, what am I doing? This is the wrong place to start this. So I'm not going to do it. That forces us over to where the work needs to end up. Now, if a company doesn't use GitLab, there's probably some other tool that they use, whether it's Figma, whatever tool it is for your team, it doesn't really matter. The point is, find whatever that is and think, where does the work need to end up? And do a trial run. I mean, just say we're changing tiers for a quarter. We're going to delete messages after 90 days and see how it changes. The secondary part of that is it forces GitLab to think about Slack primarily as an informal communication tool, which actually solves another problem in remote teams, which is people tend to feel isolated, or they don't feel like they connect with people on a relational level. So given that we can't use Slack for work, like what the heck do we use it for? So instead we create topical channels, things like hiking, music, mental health, fitness, parents. There's a parent channel where people can just talk about anything related to parenting, which in the current state has become incredibly useful.
Yes.
Parents from all over the world. We have people in 67 countries. So they have very different approaches to parenting. And some of them are incredibly, like, they're epiphanies to other people in other countries, where they'll say something like, hey, I have my kids are home. We need them to do this. Like, they're rebellious. I mean, anything. They can have an actual genuine person-to-person conversation on managing kids at home. This would be almost taboo to bring up in an office. Like it almost doesn't even fit in an office. But we have tailor-made Slack to be the home of informal communication. And when you're talking about things like that, and you see a red bubble come up, you know that like that doesn't need immediate attention. All we're talking about is managing kids at home. Like that's clearly not the most urgent thing. It's just a casual conversation that you can jump into and jump out of, and there's no expectations otherwise. So that's the forcing function of using Slack primarily for informal communication. And again, the secondary benefit is it makes people feel more connected to each other. I mean, now we have these parents that are bonding over shared experiences that are happening in 60 plus countries all over the world that would never happen if we only use Slack for work. So that's That's the second layer to it. I think the third layer to it is being intentional about what's urgent and what's not. Listen, we have client service people on our team,
Yeah.
and they have very prescriptive shifts on they have to watch this. That is their literal job, to watch for things popping up immediately and solve it for the customer.
Okay.
However, that is not everyone's job. So we document this in the handbook of these people have to treat messages this way during this
Got
time
it.
because that's the job. But other
Ah,
people do not. And so what you're running into is the kind of least common denominator, whereas the
yeah.
team that has to respond the fastest then kind of permeates the entire organization recklessly. Like that doesn't have to happen. There may
Yeah.
be components of your company that need to respond, but there are other components where not only do they not need to respond, they probably shouldn't have even started the conversation in that channel. It should have been
Got it.
started somewhere else where it could be discussed in a healthier manner. So it's it's decoupling Slack from work. Like there's a lot of other layers in there and it's kind of team dependent.
Yes.
Is this helpful? I mean, this is a big
No, no,
one.
no. This is no. I know. I love and hate Slack. It's this thing where, but all this is super helpful because we have. I think someone has brought up the fact. How about expiring? Someone
Yeah,
did bring it up earlier, and
yeah.
there was a lot of. I think because we're so used to using Slack, probably not the right way as a documentation thing where people were nervous about that. But I could see where
Right.
you're saying it's like if you don't, then it makes documentation live in almost too many places.
For sure. You cannot have like the core thing about documentation is you need a single source of truth.
Yeah.
Just documenting recklessly in the wild does no one any good because then you have documentation that is siloed across the organization.
Yeah.
It's fragmented. It doesn't connect in a meaningful way. It needs to be documented in a single place. And yeah, it's breaking that or implementing the 90-day rule on Slack is going to feel awkward at first until it doesn't. And then you're going to think, I wish we would have done this earlier.
Ah.
It's not like something that's just going to be easy. It's going to take
Oh, I
some
know.
habitual things where people are going to have to remind people like, hey, it feels like you're starting a project here. Like I'm going to copy and paste this over into an issue.
Yeah.
We're going to take the conversation over there. And you just have to have an open culture that's like, oh yeah, right. Like we're changing workflows. This is for the benefit of
Yeah.
everyone. And this is why we're doing it this way. But it
Okay.
does take some reminding. I mean, we see people come into GitLab and they're not acclimated to using GitLab, to using Slack that way. And
Yeah.
you'll see the same thing happen. And we'll just say, hey, like totally get it. This is how 99.9% of the world works, but we don't do this. We don't want to start the project here because all traces, the history of it, the archive of it are going to be gone in 90 days. So let's start it over here. After one or two of those, you get it. It becomes
You
second.
get it. Ah, okay. No, this is great. And I know, and then the last question. So something that we're also trying to figure out now that the world dynamics has changed a little bit is there's a lot of tips and tricks out there, right, to prevent loneliness or isolation, especially for extroverts with using Slack. So we started to use Slack also for like, call it at home, or like, things just to help with cooking. However, there's something slightly different in team cohesion. So that's a question where team cohesion, I don't necessarily see it as a social aspect, even though a social aspect is important to build that team
Sure.
rapport.
Yeah.
So how does, I guess, GitLab do it where teams feel cohesive, whether it's like the product team or a certain engineering pod or the people team? Like, how does that cohesion, how do you guys do the cohesion in a remote way? Because that's one of the things that's coming up because we have new team members starting to join and it's like, whoa, how do we do this so they don't feel like too independent or too untethered?
This is definitely a journey. It's not a binary on or off thing. This is something that
Okay.
you iterate on. And with each additional hire, you have to work that much harder to do it. I mean, when GitLab was 50 people, we were just naturally cohesive because we could just get everyone on the same call on the same day and just talk about whatever. At 1,200 people, it changes. I mean, we had a company call every single day where we documented this is what we did. We did company announcements. We did promotions. We did discretionary
Yeah.
bonuses. We would introduce new hires. And then we got to about 1,000 people and we realized that this does not work anymore. People aren't attending, like people get no value out of it. And this was a
Yeah.
very precious thing. Like this was literally
Yeah.
the beginning of the company. And it's one of those things that you can't be religious about it. We just went over to the people group and we're like, look, the stats say no one is engaged in this. How do we change this to make it better? So it is no more. Like we fundamentally changed it. We uprooted everything about it. We still do a call, but it's more segmented so that groups are smaller and they can have tighter bonds, and we talk about different things. We've moved what used to be announced in the company call over to a Slack channel where more people can see it, that you don't necessarily have to be on the call. And it's one of those things that for some companies, it would be the end of the world to have to, like that's our culture, but it's not. Like make it better. Don't be afraid to change it and make it better. And you might have to do that really rapidly as you scale. One thing I want to mention on Slack that actually helps cohesion and kind of goes back to answer more in depth your last question is that we are very liberal about using Slack statuses. I think a lot of teams that, especially hybrid remote teams, are new to remote, suddenly remote teams. They're more inclined to just kind of leave their bubble green on Slack with no status. Like I'm generally available, like if you need me, but that's actually not true. Like they're trying to get real work done. Their cat is actually climbing on their head. Their kid just stubbed their toe 2 rooms over. But you'll never know that because they're scared to change their Slack status. Like it just shows they're available. So you're like, well, they're available. We are diligent about updating that status. And if we're like out for a run, it's like there's an icon of someone running and it says running.
Yeah.
We'll be back around this time. Especially in the current atmosphere, we've considered things like, let's just make the stop sign, like the outline of the stop sign, the universal symbol of you don't even need an explanation after it. Like just make a keyboard shortcut to change your status to the stop sign. And that just tells everyone you need a minute. It doesn't matter what it is. You maybe need a minute break. You just need a nap. You need some fresh air. You just need to like do anything. It doesn't matter. This sign just says, hey, I need some empathy. I need some space. I hear you. I'll get back to you. Like I'm here, but I cannot be of assistance to you right now. And it's just, that creates this blanket of empathy where if you see that, it's like, number one, cool, totally got it.
Yeah.
Number two, the next time this person interacts with you, truly check in with this person. Like,
I like that. Yeah.
Can this wait till tomorrow? Like I saw that red sign. I've got something that I love your help on, but honestly, it's kind of low priority. Would it be better for you if we scheduled this for later? It invites those kind of conversations instead of letting them go under the radar, and then it just kind of snowballs and snowballs. And then you've got people completely burnt out. You're like, why didn't I see that coming? It's because like inch by inch by inch by inch, it got a little bit worse. And it's amazing what those statuses can do. If it's understood across the company, it's like, cool, that's now operating.
I like that.
Think about it from the in-office environment. If you were to walk over to someone's chair and then you tap them on the shoulder and they just like turn around and they look like they've seen a ghost or something is clearly visibly wrong, immediately you would say like sorry, this can wait, or like we should do this another time. So the Slack status can act as the virtual interpretation of something like that. Now, to dive a little bit more into cohesion, as the team scales, it takes intentionality in a remote environment. And here's what I mean by that. It is actually a responsibility of our people group to meet with leaders of the individual teams, whether that's finance, engineering, marketing, and so on. And meet with those leaders and figure out what events can we put on the calendars of your whole team, or even sub teams within, like corporate within marketing, and product marketing is within marketing. So you get even smaller. Can we do things like a great example is this week, we're having an all marketing talent show. It can be you, it can be a family member, it can be a kid, it can be a pet, whatever. And there's a document that's been attached to this. It's been in the calendar for weeks now. And you can sign up like, this is the person or animal I'm bringing. This is the talent that I'm going to display. And then there's a judging panel, and it will be ranked and people will win stuff. Like it's like a full on talent show. This stuff helps build team cohesion, but it will never happen if the people group doesn't take responsibility of making it happen. This is the kind of thing where you need a team dedicated to culture to think about look at the in-office environment. You would have a team that says, okay, we got this big milestone coming up. And we want to make sure that we do a happy hour or some sort of celebration, or like, let's go to a Giants game as a team after we hit this milestone. Okay, what's the virtual version of that?
Yeah.
You need a team in place doing that, because if you just let teams just kind of like figure it out on their own, some teams may be able to do it if they have like strong-willed extroverts that in the absence of leadership lead. I'm just going to like create something and get the team together. But what if you have a team full of introverts? It's like, I don't feel like
no, it's true.
this. I don't feel like owning this. I definitely don't want to run this. I don't want to be the lead on this call. But if it exists, I would happily show up. So it becomes an intentional responsibility of the culture of people team to meet with leaders, brainstorm, think through what are some things that we can put in place and do that. Even if it's a coaching session, there's this thing called the SDI, where it's this team building exercise. You usually get an administrator to come in with the team and just answer questions. You do some basic team activities, and it maps out where you are on the spectrum of color in terms of where your defaults usually are. It's an incredibly valuable thing for teams, and it can be done virtually. But again, it's not going to happen if someone in leadership doesn't take the initiative to stand it up.
Okay. No, this is great. No, thank you, Darren. It's definitely, this whole thing is a great learning process. And even without what's going on right now in the world, these are all helpful anyway, because honestly, it's like.
No, that's the goal. I mean, this is not just for here and now. This is laying good infrastructure to build strong bonds and strong culture going forward. I mean, it matters a lot right now, but it's something the sooner you implement this, the better. And I think the core thread, the core takeaway about this is intentionality. Remote teams require intentionality in a way that in-office teams do not. So much just happens spontaneously in an office. People just naturally walk by each other. They naturally think of conversations, naturally think of games that they want to do, because they're in that same shared physical space. And we're conditioned from childhood in classrooms, which are just kid offices, to do the exact same thing. So when you put us in an office as an adult, we're like, oh, we got it. We've been doing this since birth. But when there's no physical office there, you have to be intentional about replicating that. You have to be intentional about informal communication. You have to be intentional about how you use Slack. Otherwise, it just goes crazy. You have to be intentional about how do we bond as a team. You have to be intentional about when are the moments during the year that we get people together in the same space. Everything requires a little bit more discipline and a little bit more intentionality, but that's awesome. Who would want less discipline and intentionality in their company? Like it is additional work, but the long tail benefits of it are incredible.
Yeah. No, thanks, Darren. This is super helpful.
Of course. Happy to help.
All right.
Cool. Well, any other questions?
Nope, that's it. Those are the three big ones that have surfaced most recently. So yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you for those questions. And for anyone viewing, I'm going to put some links down below with GitLab handbook pages that relate to this. And if you have any other questions or feedback, feel free to leave them in the chat. Penny, thanks so much for joining.
Thanks, Darren. Bye.